In this podcast, we'll be utilizing Adobe Flash to build a small interactive media piece. In the process, I'll introduce creating symbols, drawing in Flash, working in the timeline with keyframes, and exporting your media. The piece we'll be making will look like this. It'll be the phases of the moon. You'll have a moon image in the back. You'll have an animating moon animation of the white area, the glowy area of the moon that's animating. And anytime you roll over this, we'll create buttons and scripting. Anytime you roll over this, it'll bring up which phase of the moon you're in. And then I've gone ahead and added some extra text here that tells you a little bit about each of the terms. So waxing, or waning, and so on. Let's see if we can get a waning crescent, get the new moon, and then the full moon. Alright, so that's what we're building. When you first launch Flash, you should be greeted by this introduction screen. To start a new Flash file, go to the Create New section and click on the Flash icon with ActionScript 3. This doesn't mean you have to use or write any ActionScript in your file. It just means that the Flash file will utilize ActionScript 3 as its base language. If you never incorporate any ActionScript and just build animations, you'll never know the difference. But to stay consistent and for future use, you should always click the ActionScript 3 button. If you don't see this window, go up to File, New, and you should open this dialog box, the New Document dialog box. Click the topmost icon, ActionScript 3, and let's go ahead and change our window size, our file size. The width, let's make 400 pixels. And the height, 150. The frame rate will set to 12 frames per second, and we'll leave our ruler units in pixels. For a background color, let's pick a nice dark blue and then click OK. Let's save our project by going to File, Save, and then naming the project whatever you want. I'll call mine Moon Phase. And we'll save that as a Flash CS6 document. Next, we're going to insert a symbol into our movie. Go up to Insert, New Symbol, and when the window comes up, we're going to select symbol of type movie clip. And we're going to name the symbol Moonbase. Now when you're writing the word Moonbase, we want to use what's called camel case, which means there are no spaces between words. The initial term begins with a lowercase letter, and any new word begins with an uppercase letter. Flash is case sensitive, so if you were to name this MOON with a lowercase b, ASE, and you were to refer to it with the uppercase B, Flash would throw an error. So in this case, we want to utilize camel case and spell it lowercase MOON, uppercase B, lowercase ASE, and we want our symbol to be of movie clip type, and then click OK. As soon as you create your Moonbase movie clip, Flash will open into what's called symbol editing mode. So you'll see up here on the upper left of your window, there'll be a tab for Scene 1, and then there'll be a tab for Moonbase. Even though the screen looks very similar, you're not actually in movie editing mode or scene editing mode at this time. You are in symbol editing mode, so you've digressed into a lower place where you can edit just this symbol, and whatever you do in this symbol will not put anything on the actual timeline. In fact, Flash has more than one timeline. There are what's called nests of timelines. If we click on Scene 1, you'll note we go back to the original movie, and this is our timeline here for the entire movie, or for the first scene. If we click on the library over here and double click on our Moonbase, you see our Moonbase symbol is in the library. If we double click on that, Now we're back in symbol editing mode, as you can tell by seeing the Moonbase tab open again. Click on Scene 1, we're in movie editing mode, double click on the symbol, and we're in symbol editing mode. So in symbol editing mode, in the Moonbase symbol, we're going to draw our base moon. To do that, we want to go to our tools, and we want to set up our oval tool. So click on the oval tool. Then we want to basically draw any oval sort of in the middle where this hash mark is. It doesn't really matter what we draw because we're going to edit this and utilize properties to fix it. So next, go back to Tools and click on your Selection tool. Click on the green disk in the center, go up to Properties, and let's edit this shape. We want to make sure there's no fill in and there's no stroke, so your stroke should have a slash through it. For fill color, let's click on whatever color it is and select white, or FF. And then in terms of position and size, in X, we'll click on that, type 0. Click on Y, type 0. And we'll click on width and height and type in 120. That should put the left edge of our moon disk registered with the center mark, the top registered with the center line, the color white, and our position should be X0 and Y0. Since what we're after here is to try and sketch out a rough shape of the moon, I downloaded an image to my desktop, and I'm going to import that to Stage. This is another way we can get content into Flash. I don't really want it in my library because what I'm going to do is import this graphic, utilize it as a guide to draw my moon, and then throw it away again. So we'll just import to Stage for now. I grabbed a screenshot off the desktop, and then we'll open and insert that one. Okay, so I'm going to place it over here next to my moon shape and use it just as a visual guide to sketch out my moon. Our next task is to do some erasing on our moon so that we'll get sort of rough patches of blank space on it. Ultimately, we're going to utilize this with what's called an alpha channel, so we're going to scale back its opacity some. So this can be a crude drawing. It's not that critical. We go to our tools, click on our eraser, and then down here under eraser shape, we'll grab probably about a middle range eraser brush. We can close our tools. And then basically we'll erase out some of these shapes. Again, they don't have to be perfect because we're not really after a perfect shape here. We're just after some similarities in our moon. And then maybe we'll take a little bit finer brush just to connect some of this stuff. Okay, once you have something kind of similar to that, that should probably be fine. We'll add a little bit more there. Grab the selection tool and go ahead and throw away our moon image. So select the moon image and type a delete, and that will throw away the delete key, and that will throw away that. And then next, let's go up to File, Save, and save your file. Now we want to insert a new movie clip, a new symbol. Make sure it's a movie clip, and let's call it Moon Phasing. Again, remember we're using camel case, and we're not having spaces between words. Now click OK. Alright, so we're in the Moon Phasing movie clip. We're going to do a little bit of timeline work. So in the Moon Phasing timeline, what we're going to do is lay in the frames we need for the animation. So first we want to come down and this is your playback head, the pink line. We're going to click in frame 3 and we're going to go to Insert Timeline Keyframe to insert a keyframe. So you can see you can scrub the playback head back and forth now within any frame selected. The circular the frame with the circle at the bottom means it's a keyframe. This is a standard frame that extends whatever art is in that keyframe to here, and this is a new keyframe. Now we're going to extend this keyframe to persist all the way to frame 83. So we'll click in frame 83, go to Insert, Timeline, Frame, or you can type an F5 key, and that will insert blank frames all the way up to 83. This lays in the timeline work, the frames we need for the animation. Next, we're going to go ahead and draw our moon reveal. So to do that, let's go back to our tools, click our ellipse, make sure we have no stroke, and we have a white fill. Let's hold down the Shift key and draw any circle. Then we're going to grab our selection tool, select it, and we're going to use the same parameters as before. 0 for X, 0 for Y, 120 for width, and 120 for height. Before we start manipulating the circle, let's control our snapping, because snapping is, let me show you how that works. If I grab my subselection tool and click my disk, and I want to start to manipulate this, if I grab this first anchor point, you can see that as I get closer to this anchor point here, my tool is going to want to snap to that anchor point. To prevent that, because I want more subtle control over that, I'm going to go to View, Snapping, and I'm going to turn off Snap Align. Currently I have checked Snap Align, Snap to Guides, and Snap to Objects. So I'm going to click off all three of those so that I'll have no snapping. And then I can move my objects wherever I want. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. Alright, that's probably good. And then grab my subselection tool. Now, while I have my disk here, I'm going to come in frame 42 and I'm going to insert another keyframe, timeline keyframe. Then I'm going to click in frame 3 where I have my whole disk still, and I'm going to grab this subselection tool and start to move my anchor points over to create a sliver. So to do that, I'm going to grab this one and slide it over. I'm going to grab this one and tilt it a little differently so it doesn't disappear and move that into position. I'm going to hold down the Option key and grab the end of this one so I can split it and create a little curve, a reverse curve, so it'll come to a point and come back instead of recurving. Whoops, I don't want to move them all at once. Just want to move them one at a time. I'm going to flatten that one just a bit, and on that side. Okay, so I get it a little more even. Next, I'm going to do the same on the bottom. Move that bit over, hold down the Option key as I tilt this one over to get it a little flatter. And whoops, too many at once. Drag that one into place and then flatten it out a bit. Okay, so I end up with something kind of like that. Alright, that's not bad. That's a little bit flat here. Okay, and I end up with my moon sliver. I'm going to come on the other side. In frame 8, click on frame 83. I'm going to insert a keyframe. And I'm going to do the same thing. So instead of my crescent being on this side in frame 83, it's going to be on the other side. So I'm going to do the same. Okay, when I'm done with that, I'm going to save. And then I'm going to insert my tween. So basically what we want is to go from this crescent, which persists all the way to this keyframe, to morph to the disk so that the crescent slowly widens and then makes the whole disk, then to have that morph into this crescent. To do that, I go on my layer 1 in the timeline, I click anywhere in the middle, of this gray bar between the keyframe and the end frame. I right click and then I pull down to create shape tween, and I create a shape tween. Now it's going to be distorted because we're going to need to add shape hints in order to explain to Flash what we want these anchor points to be doing. Basically what it's doing is grabbing one of these anchor points and then it's moving it over to the destination it thinks it should end up at. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the one we intended. So we're going to add shape hints to help that out. Let's add another shape tween in the second bar here, the second bar in the timeline. Add another shape tween and see how that works. Okay, that one is not bad. That one actually seems to be working pretty well. It seems easier for Flash to take it from circle to crescent than from crescent to hole. So let's add some shape hints to help that out. To add shape hints, we click on the cell in the very first frame. We need the selection tool for this. Then we go up to Modify, Shape, Add Shape Hint. Okay, and we get a little circle here. I'm going to take that circle and drop it on the left edge here. And then we're going to click in the next keyframe and you'll see you have another one. So you put that one where the destination is. And this way, Flash has a better clue as to where these anchor points go to. Now, one isn't going to be enough because it's pretty confused about the top. So since we have that one locked up, let's say Modify, Shape, Shape Hint, add another one. Throw this one at the top. Click on here. Move that one to the top. All right. And that was enough. Now it understands, says, oh, okay, that's what you thought. And so now it manipulates in this way and we have it. Now if yours still isn't working, add as many shape hints as you have anchor points. You basically have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 anchor points. You may need to add as many as 8 shape hints to try and clear up where all those anchor points should be animating. Once you get that done and working, go back to frame 1, press a carriage return, and you should see your animation moving. Next, we're going to build another movie clip and we're going to use it to put these text titles that call out the various phases on rollover, like waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, and so on. To do that, we're going to first go to our scene. So we're going to click out of the moon phasing movie clip. And we're going to insert, let's click open our library so you can see we have our moon base, our moon phasing. We have our screenshot that was our moon before. We can click on that and just delete that. We don't need it. We can insert a new symbol, a movie clip, and we'll call that moon or phase text, TXT, and we'll click OK. In the first keyframe there, we want to grab our text tool and we're going to make a text block. Let's go to Properties. We want classic text, static text, and then let's make our font, well, pick a font that you like, one that's legible, and make the size about 15 point and the color white. And then in there, let's type in new moon and, whoops, then grab our selection tool so we have that. Next, we're going to add a keyframe in frame 4. So click in the timeline in frame 4, insert a keyframe, and we're going to double click on the type here and type in waxing crescent. And this works just exactly like our drawing did of the phasing. I'll have one text box throughout my entire timeline, and each keyframe will simply denote a change in the type, so that I won't have to keep adding text boxes. The advantage of that is that all of them will be registered in exactly the same X and Y position, so that they won't jiggle around if I don't get them perfect to the pixel. So next we'll add a keyframe in frame 20, and we'll change the type as you see on your screen. For each frame, go ahead and change the words, add a keyframe and change the words throughout the timeline. So your timeline should now look like this. You should be able to scream along and see it go from new moon to waxing crescent to first quarter, waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, and so on. What we're doing here, and you note that I extended the last one in 64 out to frame 83. What we're trying to do is create an animating timeline that aligns, if I click in my library a second and go to moon phasing, that aligns with our moon phasing animation, so that as the moon is phasing through those various stages, it's hitting those phases as along or in sync with the text. So we're going to basically stack these onto the stage in the scene at some point. As soon as we're done with a couple more things, we have to build all the pieces first, but once we've done that, we're going to stack these things and collage them onto the stage. And then as their timelines play, they'll be in sync. We'll have our phase text in line with our moon phasing. The next thing we need to do is to build a button. Basically, you see in this piece, when you roll over the moon, or actually an invisible button target over the moon, is the target or the button that triggers the moon animations to stop and the text to be loaded. So basically, whenever you roll over the moon target, we'll build an invisible button disk, and we'll align that with the moon. That becomes the button target. You can see even your cursor changes as you go over that target, and then we'll include some scripting to load the text and to stop the animation so that your user can read the title. So the next thing we need to do is to go click on the scene. We'll get out of the phase text movie clip. We can open up our library so we can see how things are progressing along. Not a bad idea to save this piece at this point. We've done kind of a lot of work in here. Excuse me. Then insert a new symbol. Only this time, instead of a movie clip, we're going to insert a button, and we're going to call that button phase button. Again, camel case. If you don't remember camel case, screen back through this movie, scrub back and figure out what it is. No spaces between words. That's really important. All right, and click OK. Now, we're in the button editing mode here. We're not in the scene and we're not in the movie clip editing mode. We're in button editing mode. Note the difference in the timeline. Because a button responds to user interaction, the button has various states that are locked in. The up state, the over state, the down state, and the hit state. By default, you have only one keyframe in the up state. We're going to click in the hit frame, and we're going to insert a keyframe there. And so basically what we're trying to do, as you saw in the moon piece, you don't see the button on the stage. So what we want is no up, over, or down state. We don't want any graphics in there. Whatever graphics we put in here would allow us to shift between the various states. So when we roll over, if we have an up state, and we say we had a box and we roll over it, we could insert a keyframe here and change the color of the box or change the type or whatever. When you click on it, if the button is down, it could change again. We don't want any of that because we want that button to be invisible. So all we want is a hit target. We want a graphic in hit. Whatever's in the hit state, no one sees. it just becomes the target, the button target for the cursor or for the user's cursor. So what we're going to do is we're going to create basically a moon disk there, 120 by 120 at position X, Y, 0, 0, moon target. It can be whatever color you want because no one's going to see it. It's just pixels creating a pixel target. I'm going to select my oval tool and properties. White is fine, but you can change the color and make it a wacky color if you want because, again, no one's going to see it. Hold down the Shift key and draw any circle. Let's go get our selection tool. Click on it and set our fill. Should be whatever color, doesn't matter. No stroke. Positions, we want X0, Y0, width 120, height 120. So it's exactly the size of our moon, so when we collage them or layer this one over the top of our moon, it will be the target, but you won't see it, and we know we can align it precisely at 0, 0, and it will align. Otherwise, we'd have to lay it on top. It's a problem because you can't see it. You'd have to have excuse me, you'd have to have it, it would be slightly translucent blue, but you'd have to align the top to the pixel, otherwise it would jiggle or it wouldn't work, and that's difficult to do. Let's use the computer as to our advantage, so we'll just make our settings precisely like they were in our moon disk, in our phase animation, and we can align all those things at 0, 0, and they'll all just stack up perfectly. So now that we've got our button finished, let's click on scene 1 and go back to the main scene. I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit so we can see that better and grab my selection tool. In the main timeline, we have layers. So we're going to utilize these layers now to organize our Flash file. We're in the main movie timeline. The timelines look similar, but make sure that there's no digression up here. It should just say scene 1. We're going to click on the text for layer 1, the title layer 1, and we're going to rename layer 1 title. Okay? We're going to go up to insert timeline layer and insert a new layer. Okay, so we now have 2 layers in our timeline. So we're going to double click on that one and rename the second layer phase text layer. Okay, I'm going to pull this to the side a little bit. So we can see that. And then we want to create 3 more layers and name them as follows. So we'll have one called moon base, one called phase, one called phase button layer, one called phase text layer, and one called title. You can stack these any way you want, or you can move them around. I'm going to grab the title and pull that to the top. I'm going to put the moon base below the phase and the phase button up on top above those 3. Phase text we'll put above that. So we'll have title followed by text followed by our button, which will be above the phase animation, which will be above the base. So now that we have our layers all set, we're going to start to add content. Let's go and open the library so we can see our movie clips. We're going to start out in the moon base layer. So click the keyframe in the moon base layer. Make sure that's the one you're working in. If you're uncertain, you can always click these locks so that you can't work or mistakenly put something in a layer where it doesn't belong. Okay, you can leave those locked or not. I'm going to go into the moon base layer. We want to grab the moon base clip, drag it onto the stage. Alright, it doesn't matter where you put it because we're going to use the properties. If we click on the properties palette, we're going to use the properties to set it. We want to put its X position at 20 and its Y position at 10. And that will register this. Then we can take the other things that stack on top of it and put them at the same position and work that out. I'm going to lock the moon base and we're going to go to the phase layer. In the phase layer, in the phase keyframe, we're going to go to the library. We're going to drag moon phasing. Now, moon phasing doesn't have anything in frames 1 through 3, so you're not going to see anything but this little plus icon that shows you the registration mark of that. Understand that in the moon phasing, that entire timeline is here in the same way the moon base. That entire timeline is nested into the main timeline now. This is a timeline and so on. In Flash, this is how you work. You can work within one timeline, but that moon phasing brings with it its own timeline. It's kind of like if you're watching a movie of someone driving by in a car, and in the car they have a laptop playing a movie, so you're seeing a movie and a movie and a movie. Okay? So in the phase layer, we want to drag the moon phasing clip onto the stage. Let's go to Properties. Okay, set that. You can see I have an instance of moon phasing. And we want to set that to x20, y10, just like we did before. All right, so that now these two are precisely aligned. We're going to add some other things. We're going to go to Color Effect, twirl down the Color Effect tab, and select Alpha. And then type in or grab the slider and pull in 90% for alpha. Okay, so basically we're going to make it a little translucent so you can see the moon slightly behind it. All right, then we're going to go to Filters. I'm going to close Color Effect so we can see better. Open Filters. Down at the bottom here, if you roll over, you can see there's an Add Filter button. Click that to add a filter, and we're going to add a blur. The properties for the blur, we're going to make X5 and Y5, okay, quality high. All right, we're going to twirl, close the blur. We're going to add one more filter. We're going to add a glow. All right, glow, we're going to make X and Y 7. And then our quality also high. The color, we don't want a red blur, we want, or a glow rather, we want a white glow. All right, and we're going to set that. Next, we're going to go to the phase button layer. I'm going to lock my phase layer. We're going to go to the phase button layer, go to our library, and drag our phase button onto the stage. Okay, this is the translucent target. Okay, this will be invisible to the user, but we're able to see it just in an offset blue. You can see it's a little translucent. And we're going to set its properties to stack right on top of our phase and our moon. So position, again, X20, Y10, and you can see that it aligns precisely. If we were to do this, you could do this manually, just trying to stack these things, but if you type in, say, 11 here, you can see it's off by just a pixel. Often that's difficult to see. I've zoomed in here. I'm going to zoom out to kind of show you. If I was trying to do that here, I wouldn't be able to see that it isn't precisely aligned, and you might end up with bad precision. So we'll type in 10, and that way we know that Flash has got this registered to the pixel. Okay, we're going to lock our phase button layer and go to our title layer. And in our title layer, we're going to create a text block. We'll put a title up here. All right, and basically just create for yourself a text block and type in phases of the moon. Okay, my type is green. I don't like that, so I'm going to make that, let's say, white. All right, size isn't bad. Let's make it a little bigger, maybe 24. That's a bit large. Let's try 20. That's better. Okay, so we'll throw phases of the moon up there. Next, we're going to go to our phase text layer. We'll lock our title, go to our phase text layer, and in phase text, we'll go to the library, bring our phase text in, and just compose that with our title. Okay, so you can put that anywhere. Just compose that with your title. We're going to go to Properties, and we're going to give this clip an instance name. A little bit about instances. Having things in the library here, these are movie clips, so they're loaded into the movie one time, keeping the movie file size kind of small. If I needed several of these, I could load them from this movie clip and bring in what's called an instance of this clip. An instance is simply information about where it occurs on the stage, any alpha color information, but the actual data is pulled from the movie clip. This is different from me creating several, say, moon phase animations or moon phase content on the screen. Each time I create one, that one increases the overall size of my file. When I use instances, I only have one piece of data actually loaded, and I continually create just addresses of it. So anytime Flash needs to draw it on the stage, it says, okay, I need to go back, look at the data in that movie clip, and just copy and redraw that data, draw that data on the screen. I can create 1,000 instances of this, and my file size will go up very, very little, because I'm only stacking in, it's only remembering the position of those instances. It's not copying the entire data there. It's utilizing the initial movie clip to draw it on this stage. So instancing is a great way to keep your file size down. The other thing you can do, because we're going to be using some action script or some scripting or programming to control this, utilizing instances allows you to give them distinct names, where it said instance name up here. It allows you to give them distinct names so that I can ostensibly talk to Flash and say, go to this instance on the stage, go to the New Moon 1 or whatever, and change its color or change its position or animate it or detect if the user's rolled over it or anything like that. We're going to call this one, since it's our phase text, we're going to call it P text using camel case. All right. We're going to go to our color effect, alpha, and we're going to turn this to 0%. So just scrub that down so you can't see it. And then what we'll be able to do is utilize scripting to say whenever someone rolls over this, stop the movie and pump the alpha on our p-text up to 100% so you can see it. When they roll off, kick it back down to 0. And that has it appear and disappear as we saw in the sample movie. So we need to do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we need to write some code to pull all this together. First of all, let's go to our library so that you see your movie clips. Excuse me. And let's click on the top one, Moonbase, right-click it, pull down to Properties, and we need to utilize this, this instance name in ActionScript. In order to do that, we need to create what's called a linkage. So Flash needs to understand that this movie clip is exported for ActionScript and has a proper linkage identifier. So we're going to click Export for ActionScript, leave Export in Frame 1 checked, and then use these as default. In essence, when you're writing ActionScript, you need to deal with programmatic classes and base classes. You don't need to worry about this. This is not something you have to really memorize. I mean, we're not getting degrees in writing JavaScript here. But just understand that when you click Export for ActionScript, these things are taken care of, and then we can utilize this name Moonbase and add actions and write scripts to it because they're being excuse me, included in the class or in the programmatic class. Let's click OK, and let's do the same. This will come up. A definition for the class cannot be found, so it'll create one. That's fine. Click Don't Show Again, and it'll just do it automatically. And click OK. Go to Moon Phasing. Let's do the same. Properties, check, OK. Phase button, click, Properties, Export for ActionScript, OK. And phase text, Properties, Export, OK. All right, so now we have our classes in place. Let's go to our moon phasing. Let's see, turn this off and go to our moon phase. And we're going to click a Command A, hold down the Command key, type an A, to select our, I'm sorry, on the, we're going to have to lock the phase button and click the phase. Make sure you have all layers locked except the phase layer. The problem is we want to select the moon phase, but the moon phase doesn't have any content in frame 1. So if we can't really click on it because there's nothing there on the stage. So to do that, what we do is lock everything but that. Make sure we have just the moon phase unlocked. Hold down Command and type an A. That gets us this instance. We'll go to Properties, and we're going to, if you don't have this named already, make sure you name this Phase Inst, P-H-A-S-E, capital I-N-S-T. All right, so we will be able to utilize that name by name with ActionScript. Okay, we'll do that. We'll lock the phase layer, go to the phase button layer, unlock it, so it's the only layer unlocked. All right, we're going to click our button, and we're going to type in an instance name for it. We're going to call it PHASE capital B-T-N, phase button. Okay, that's the next thing. Then in this layer, we're going to put in an action. So we're going to click on that keyframe. We're going to go to Window and open the Actions palette. And when the Actions window opens, we're going to type in the following verbatim. This has to be typed in exactly the way it's written here because all of these names are written accordingly. What we're doing, just to explain it as you're typing it in, we're utilizing the name phase BTN, phase button. We're going to do in Flash what's called adding an event listener. Personal computers are event-based computers. The events that can happen are user events. The user can move the mouse, they can roll the mouse over something, roll the mouse out of something, they can have the mouse over something, they can click the mouse, they can release the mouse, they can type any key, and the computer understands these as key down, key still down, key up, for every key on the keyboard, including combinations. If you hold down the Option, Command, Shift, and type a key, that's different than just the key, or just the key with Shift, or just the key with Command. The mouse events, we're basically having it listen for a mouse event. The mouse event we're specifically wanted to be interested in is a rollover. Now, ActionScript is case sensitive, so anywhere you see a capital letter, it needs to be capitalized. Anywhere you see a lowercase letter, it needs to be lowercase on this screen. This is very, very specific. I'll zoom in here just a touch so that you can get the text precisely right. Okay, so that's maybe a little bit clearer. Let me adjust the window here so you can see exactly. So you want to type you can pause the movie and go ahead and type all of this in just to finish up. So we want the mouse event for it to pay attention to a rollover. And when it does that, we want it to call this rollover function. All right, we write functions down here. So basically, this is kind of like a menu item or an instruction. When you roll over, do this. These are some properties regarding the way you declare an event listener. You don't need really to worry about them. Just make sure they're correct. These are commas between each of the properties. Okay, so when the phase button detects on its event listener a mouse event, specifically a rollover, it will call this rollover function. Jumps down to the rollover function. The rollover function is looking for an event, specifically a mouse event, then void, it doesn't return anything, and then it does the actions between the curly brackets. The curly bracket signifies that we start the list of actions. The closing curly bracket that closes this one here signifies the end of those actions. Each line, we have phase inst, that is our moon phase. We want that movie to stop whenever we detect a rollover. There, at the end of every line of ActionScript code within curly brackets needs to terminate with a semicolon. P-text, the P-text movie clip, we want it to stop so that our animation stops, our text stops, the playback head is not careening through that anymore, it locks up on one of our texts, and we turn its alpha or its opacity up to 100. So long as the user's cursor is over that button, we want this to persist. When they roll out, we want it also to be listening simultaneously for another mouse event, a rollout. When they roll their cursor off, it calls the rollout function. That function pops it down to here between the curlies. It's going to execute this code. So whenever you roll out, we want it to take the phase instance movie clip, play the movie in it, the p-text movie clip, set the playback head playing again, and the PTEX movie clip, turn its alpha back down to 0. And then this will always happen. Remember, each movie clip has its own timeline, and its timeline can be playing while other timelines are stopped. Again, this is, let's say we have a school bus with a bunch of kids on it. Each kid has a laptop and they're each playing movies and showing them out the window. The bus is driving by. The bus can stop and various movies can continue to play. The bus can go. Each kid on the bus has control over their own movie. They can stop it, they can play it, and that's what's going on here. In this instance, in this case, we have 2 movies on the bus, the phase inst and the ptext. When someone rolls over the phase button, the phase instance stops and the ptext stops, and the ptext movie is more visible. Say the kid opened the window or something. Okay, so now we have ptext alpha equals 100. When they roll out, phase instance plays, ptext plays, and they close the window. The alpha goes down to 0 so you can't see that movie again. That's what's going on here in the scripting. Make sure your syntax is perfect. Make sure your case is perfect, and type it in exactly the way you see it here. 1 semicolon change to a colon, the whole thing will break. 1 extra period, 1 underscore that's missing or present where it doesn't belong, 1 change capital letter, this script will not run. So be very, very careful. If you get it wrong, you need to go and check for typos. In 95% of the cases, if your movie is not playing, it's a typo in the script, and you need to go and debug it or find the error. It's your typing error. It's not that ActionScript doesn't work. This script works. Okay, next we're going to close this. Close the Actions window, and for some reason my phase button does not have an instance of the phase button in it. So I'm going to do that. If you go to your phase button layer, click Command A, and it doesn't pop open the properties with a phase button, then you have the same problem I do. I do a lot between recording these scenes, so I'm not sure if I just messed it up or if you messed it up along with me, or I caused you to mess it up. So just as a test, click on the phase button layer, make sure all other layers are locked. Type a Command A. If it doesn't show you your phase button, or if you don't have a light blue phase button over the top of this, then go ahead and drag it back in. Okay, go to Properties, make sure again, X20, Y10, should look like that, and name it Phase Button, P-A-B-T-N. Okay, you should have done this already, and I believe I did, but I can't remember if I did it or not. I don't know why it was missing. So once that's done, you should be able to go to Control, Test Movie, whip down to Test, click Test, and your movie should work. If you roll over it, you should have your animating moon, and you should be able to bring up your type. Okay? Our moon there looks like the movie clip in the moon itself should probably be toned back a little bit with alpha. Let's lock that and go back to moon base. Click on the moon base. Let's go to Command A to select the moon base, and let's throw an alpha effect on it and back it down. We had 90%. Let's back it down some more. Let's see how it looks at about 30%. Let's test again. That's better. We could even take it down to 25. Let's try 20, see if 20 is too much. 20 is not bad. We might even do 15. Let's try 10. We're just looking for 10's a little calm. Let's pump it up to about 15. That's not bad. That kind of looks like the moon then. All right. There it is. The other thing we could do is tone down this phase. Looks like the alpha is a little high on that too. Let's Command A to select the phase, and let's pump the alpha down to, say, 50%. Whoops. Test that, see how it looks. That's a little calm. Let's make it 65. Maybe 80. That's not bad. Now we can see the moon underneath the glow a little bit. All right, and your movie's working. The next thing to do is to publish this project. Now we're going to come back after we publish and tweak a little bit, or I'll have you tweak a little bit, and you can work with your instructor to do so, and I'll give you some guidelines. But to publish this project, or to, now that we have all the pieces in place and the whole thing is working, you can go to File, let's click Publish Settings, all right, and you can make, by default, an SWF and an HTML wrapper, which basically means the Flash is going to build an HTML page, a web page for you. It's going to embed the SWF, or the projected file, as an SWF, and it's going to build that and embed it into the HTML page. Alternately, you can create what's called a Mac projector, which is basically, or you could actually do that as well, or a Windows projector. What it's going to do is build an actual application, a Flash player application that will play, that will be your SWF playing as a in a window as an application. Let's select our publish settings and destination. I'm going to throw mine into Moon Phase Project. Okay, and I'm going to call it Moon Phase. And I already have Moon Phase FLA, the SWF is there, and so on. I'm going to call this one Moon Phase and click Save. And then I'm going to click Publish. So here's my Moon Phase projector created. I'm going to double click on that. And that's my Moon Phase piece working. Let's go over and have a look at the earlier piece that I showed you as a demo. It has a little bit more going on. I went into the moon phasing piece and added some stars. I added a movie clip that had some flying stars through here, so you see the odd shooting star, just basically another tiny circle, put a blur on it, put a glow on it, changed its opacity, and had it animate in the background. Occasionally in those timelines I create a keyframe and throw in another little star in there. On my text, I changed the color of my text, and I put under my waxing crescent title, I added a blue bar consistently. I added other text, little quotes that explain something about what the word gibbous and what the full moon's about, and what the waning means, and so on, just to kind of spice this up a little bit. I changed my alignment with to align the boxes, the blue box, precisely to these two edges of my title, and just sort of polish this up a little bit. You can go ahead and do that with your instructor and make your piece kind of your own. You've got all the basics. You understand how to create movie clips, how to add them, how to create layers, how to add them, how to stack everything on the stage, how to create instance names, to add these kinds of things. You won't need to change any of the code. The code will stay locked up. All you're doing is adding some more graphics and changing the visual environment. Good luck and enjoy Flash.